Howdy howdy, Sudevil here, and welcome to my primer video on the best infantry in an infantry fight between 600 and 900 gold. And in this primer, I'm just going to go through which units I tested, how I did the testing. I'll show some examples and what I tested them against and which units are there, so we can go through the list. And I will quickly go over all of the tests so that you can see the raw data for yourself. And this will be the primer, the explanation of some of the reasoning behind my choices, going into sort of the bottom five, the top five, and the middle pack, and the ending analysis, so that if there is any questions later on about how I did the analysis, people can see everything and all the numbers directly for themselves. I do like to have keep my testing as repeatable as possible and transparent. And, you can see my testing and repeat it if you like, and discuss how I do my testing. When I do this type of testing, I always say this, if you're new to the channel and you haven't heard it before, is that this is just one set of tests amongst a pantheon of tests that can be done to units to try and figure out which units are the best of the best, or the best in a certain situation. There are many other ways of making this evaluation, like practical. How do they fit in the army? Are they good in certain matchups? Are they good in certain situations? There's different kind of tests. This is just the way that I run the tests and how I think about them. And the tests that I run have been so far pretty reasonable and have yielded decent results. And then when the testing is all done, I'll do a video at the end where I'll do some back testing, where I'm not just going to test the units against the base units. I will test them against each other a little bit, because that's always sort of like the gut check, the sniff test. It really did the testing that we did yield results in order, in terms of rank ordering these units in the correct-ish order, because it's hard to be perfect. But I just want to understand these infantry units in terms of how good they are in infantry engagement. That's it. And the way that I've done this and set this test up is, we went from 601 to 900 gold. I got a great suggestion in a comment. I was going to go 601 to 800, but just in the comment said 601 to 900. I'm like, actually, that's a better range, because this is really all the mid-tier, tier 2 infantry, and there is a load of really great infantry in this category, and seeing them up against each other as close to directly as possible is really good. And we'll go to the list. There are some great units on this list, and when I get to when I finish up all the testing, there's a few surprises in the ending results, but in general, it's just really interesting to see how all these units stack up. Now, the 3 units I tested them against I did 420 individual tests. So I'll show you one test. So this is Foot Squires against Dwarf Warriors. So how I run my testing, and then I'll go over, this is one test. Go in here. I get the test. I use unit testing fields 100 by 100. It's a mod, and I use Pick Any General, which is another mod. So it's just 2 mods to do this. It's pretty easy. And then I select the unit, take the guard mode off, and hit start, and just make them go and fight. And when they go and fight, when they hit, I take down the time 5950, and so they've actually connected at 5950. So I'm looking at Dwarf Warriors versus Foot Squires. Dwarf Warriors cost 450, Foot Squires cost 675. They actually contact each other at 59 minutes 50 seconds, and then I let the fight go. So we'll just let them fight, and I wait till one of the units routes, and that's when I'm going to stop the clock and take information. Now, the reason I use routing and not all kill or anything like that is because it's a little easier to test on dead units, and some units are in guard mode. It's actually a pretty practical way to run this test, instead of running it to ground, lame chase, or doing anything goofy like that. You give a really good DPS. So this fight is going. Looks like the Dwarf Warriors are just about ready to route. Boom, they route. It's 57 minutes 41 where they ended. I don't know if I'll have any close to there. 57, 24, 06. So kind of in around there. So I take the ending time. So I look at the total battle time. I do 5 tests of each. That's one test. And I get an average of the battle times of 155 seconds. So it takes a Foot Squire an average of 155 seconds to defeat the Dwarf Warrior in this matchup. Then I look at the starting hit points a 5850 for the Dwarf Warrior, and the ending hit points 1217. Really, I'm looking at the average ultimately, but and the starting and finishing hit points of the Foot Squires, so that I can get a DPS for the Dwarf Warriors against the Foot Squires, or damage per second, and the DPS of the Foot Squires against the Dwarf Warriors. And then we get a gold differential because I take their starting health and the finishing health, divide it through, multiply it by their starting gold cost, and compare the two to find out how much gold or value I've gained. Then I also do the gold per minute, how fast can I get that value, and I do a gold ratio with this, how much did I spend to actually get that gold, and then I look at the win-loss ratio. So what I showed here is one test, and we've done 420 tests total to get this data set so we could analyze it. And the units I tested against were, so to make this testing consistent, I've done so much testing like over the last 2.5 years. I mean, I don't know how many, but many thousands and maybe tens of thousands of tests. I'm not really sure. Lots. And so, you know, you start to see some things or get some ideas about how to make the testing a little bit better, a little more effective. I'm always trying to get better, but so the units that I picked to test against was the base Dwarf Warrior. So I wanted to see all these units in the 601 to 900 gold range will beat the Dwarf Warrior in a straight up fight. I wanted to see how fast could they do it, and how effective were they against the base Dwarf Warrior. And plus, I just like testing dwarf units against other units. I also said, how fast can these units clear chaff? So I tested them all against Clan Rats. We used Clan Rats again in this because the Clan Rats proved out to be an excellent unit to test with in the 401 to 600 gold range. And Clan Rats, the base Clan Rats, since they've been buffed, are very good as of the testing that we have now. And lastly, I wanted to see how they would fare up against hammers. I know all of these units are going to lose in a fight to hammers, but the question I have is how fast do they lose, how much damage do they get in before they lose, and that sort of thing. So there's 28 units we tested from Bretonnia, the Foot Squires, from Chaos, Forsaken, Chaos Warriors with great weapons, and Chaos Warriors halberds. This is the lineup. This is why Chaos is actually so great. This lineup is outstanding. The Dark Elves, we got the Black Ark Corsairs and the Witch Elves. From the Dawi, we've got Longbeards with great weapons and Slayers. From Empire, we got Halberdiers and Great Swords. From Greenskins, we got Orc Big Guns and Savage Orc Big Guns. From the High Elves, we got White Lions. And from the Lizardmen, they have a lot of infantry in this category. Sour Spears, Sourus Warriors, Sour Spears with shields, and Sourus Warriors with shields. Norska, we have one unit, but it's a very good unit. It's a Marauder Berserker. From the Skaven, we have Plague Monks. From the Tomb Kings, we have Tomb Guards, and then Tomb Guards with halberds. Vampire Coast has the Sirens, and the Vampire Counts have Graveguard, Karen Race, and Graveguard with great weapons, which is well represented at this category. And lastly, the Wood Elves have the War Dancers at 800 gold. The Beastmen have no units in this category, and we're not testing regiments of renown. We're just testing basic units. So I showed how I did this test, like Dwarf Warriors against Foot Squires, so that was one test. I actually did 5 for each unit, and we ended up doing 420 tests, so I'll kind of click over these, just so if you really want, you can pause anywhere and see the test for yourself, what the numbers look like. I did put the date here, so you see I did this test on December 14th, 2018, and I like to put in the date there, so you can always, if we go back in time in history, the date's right there, if you want to see when the test was actually done, so you can go back and look at which patch it was in. And so we got all the Dwarf Warrior testing, and then we tested everything against the hammers, and 420 tests, that's 140 apiece, somewhere in there. Okay, there's the Clan Rats versus the Foot Squires, and then this is just all tests against the Clan Rats. So there we go. We've got 420 total tests, and each of the tests gave us a little bit of data. I showed you the testing that we've got, sort of how I do it, how I run them into each other, and how I grab the data. And let's go just end that battle. And sort of what the meaning behind the tests is in terms of, you know, I always say this, but it's always a good reminder, because I'd never want anyone thinking that I'm saying this is the end-all and be-all of testing, and this is the absolute value of the unit, and it will never be good anywhere if it's in a poor spot on the list. I do some post-analysis where I look at units that did show up in weird spots, and there's always great discussion in the comments. I mean, I love comments, and this is one of the set of videos that I've really enjoyed the comments a lot, because it spurs extra testing, and we get to share and have some analysis back and forth where people are asking with this, or we're going with this, and we do some more testing. So it's always been very, very good on that point. The point I'm making is that this is one piece of the puzzle, this testing. This isn't the definitive end-all and be-all of infantry evaluation. It's just an infantry evaluation in terms of infantry on infantry fights. That's it. And I try to make it as objective as I can in terms of making sure that it is repeatable, that you can see exactly how I did the testing and all my data. That said, the test I've chosen at all is completely subjective, and the way I've chosen to analyze the data is subjective. This is why I try to do some back testing at the end to sort of see if things play out. And so far, with the 400 gold and under and the 401 to 600 gold, they have played out pretty good. Like, you can actually see that the testing has yielded pretty reasonable results in that units do actually stratify, or actually stratified, no, not stratified, they rank generally correctly, which I've been very happy to see. Anyways, that's sort of the primer. That's the basics of all the data that I have, the way that I do my testing, and how I interpret that data. The next few videos, and hopefully I get them out in short order, will be the top 5, the bottom 5, and then I will actually show the rank of every unit in between, and finally I'll do a wrap-up analysis of all the units in context of each other, and that way usually that we can clean up some discussion in that last video. And then moving forward, if there's any big changes, I will try to update this video over time, which is not going to always be easy, because it is a pretty it's an immense amount of testing. Like, it really is a lot of tests. I don't mind doing it at all. I mean, I love it. That's why I do it, because I would do it anyways. If whether I'm sharing this with anyone, I would just do this testing because I love it. So anyways, that is how I've actually created or set out my testing and done it. And hopefully I'll have some videos out shortly of actually how they rank, because there's some big surprises at both ends of the spectrum. And there's one that was actually shocking, because there's a unit in this list that is so good, it is unbelievable, yet you never see it. It is shocking. It is truly surprising how good this unit is and how little you actually see it on the battlefield. Surprising. And there's a unit that is really, it's in the bottom 5, and I couldn't believe it was in the bottom 5. After I did all my testing, I went and retested it and tested that unit against other units, because I couldn't believe it was in the bottom 5, because I expected it to be mid-tier at least. But yep, it is definitely bottom 5, and it was a big surprise. So hopefully this explains how I do my testing, and I hope to have the videos out to you shortly and the analysis thereafter. And definitely looking forward to comments. You know, maybe you want to talk about testing, or even if you're stopping in to say hello or tell a story or give me a joke or whatever. I love comments. They're all great, and it's the best part of doing this for me by a mile. So hope you found that interesting, and I will see you soon.